Okay, we're going to go now with part 3 of chapter 1 of Benedict Carey's How We Learn. And here he's zooming back out from the cellular level. Before we were talking about neurons and synapses and different modules of the brain. And we're going to zoom back out from the cellular level to the human level to talk a little bit about how we retrieve memories, how we get those back out of the neocortex, and how we interpret reality and our experience as a result. And a lot of the evidence that comes from this is from epilepsy patients, once again, but in this case, it's split brain patients. So we have two hemispheres of the brain, the right side and the left side, and in certain epilepsy patients who don't respond to drugs, they end up undergoing a surgery in which the two hemispheres are split. And at first, little damage was evident, but then later on, they did some experiments where they would show an image only to the right sides, for example, of a fork, but then the left hemisphere was not accessible to that perception, and therefore didn't have language, because language is in the left hemisphere, didn't have a way to name fork. So they could see it, they could draw it, they could choose it out of a series of objects, but they were not able to name it, analyze it, and really fully understand what it was or what its purpose was. And so the brain clearly has different modules, as we were speaking about before, and that the hemispheres have different functions. And yet, how is it that we feel like our experience of the world through our brain is unified? Why does it not feel like we have two co-pilots, two separate entities? And in fact, we are able to have this sort of unified experience of the world largely because of something that helps us deal with uncertainty, which helps us to take that information and to make a story out of it. We have this module for making sense of what we perceive, and it resides somewhere in the left hemisphere. And what it does is it sees patterns, it creates meaning and narrative and cause and effect. And in fact, it's quite subjective. So we each, again, can experience something, and each of us has a different perception of what's happening. And as I speak, for example, I'm interpreting what I've read in this chapter according to the way I've made sense of it. And somebody who's read the same chapter might interpret things somewhat differently. And even within our own memory, so we absorb information, and then through the hippocampus, and then we store that information in our neocortex. And then every time we access that information, every time those neurons fire again, that string of neurons fires again, new things emerge. So different things bubble up to the surface. And in fact, as we go through the act of remembering, it is not like a file on a computer that is identical every time. In fact, it is transformed every time that we recall a memory. And so these memories become altered. So in fact, using our memories changes our memories. And we'll see in the next chapter what kind of effects that has on learning. All right, more to come.